everyone's looking for the young guy. They're looking for McVay. I think take a shot out Todd Bowles, get him a second shot at head coach, and see if he can do it.
I don't think they will. If they don't have Anthony Davis, I'm saying it right now. If Anthony Davis is out for the playoffs, they don't make it out of the first round.
It's crazy. And our kids will know how great Tom Brady is because he's going to be playing.
Yes, it is 15.0%.
That's what the Yankees brought Garrett Cole to do.
He was a 6th-round pick. This is a fairy tale story that's being written in front of our eyes.
People like to call them their JV team, and they just stole one of their better players.
They didn't struggle against the Padres. The Padres didn't really put up a fight in most of the games.
Jerry Jones, hope you're listening.
Hi, I'm Landon Bowe, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. We've had the running back conversation. Now we're going to start with the wide receiver conversation. And the man that's the ex-receiver today, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, I did technically play wide receiver, but I wasn't great.
Well, I did not play anything. I played all positions in Madden, so this is something I've been interested in. I wanted to make sure I had it right. It was a lot of trades last year with wide receivers. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and then there was Amari Cooper. All, I would say, number one wide receivers on the team that they were traded from. And to me, looking a year past it, to me, the Packers didn't solve. They didn't easily replace Devontae Adams. Cowboys, to me, they didn't replace Amari Cooper. And the Chiefs did not replace Tyreek Hill with another wide receiver. They kind of went by a committee approach. But they did draft Sky Moore in the second round. The Packers drafted Christian Watson, I believe, in the second round as well. And the Cowboys had drafted Tolbert, who did not play for them the first year.
Yeah, I don't think the goal is to replace a wide receiver with one guy, just like it isn't the goal to replace a running back with one guy. So I do think that the Chiefs replaced Tyreek. And while maybe not immediately, the Packers definitely did not replace Adams. I do like the future approach. Getting Watson, getting Romeo Doubs, and planning for the future, getting Amari Rodgers. We just have yet to see whether or not it was worth it with him leaving.
Yeah, and they did it compensated the Chiefs and Packers. Cowboys didn't really get good draft compensation. But to me, I think I can have a committee of wide receivers, but I feel there's a need for a number one wide receiver in the playoffs. A guy you can just trust to beat his man.
But if I look at any of the Patriots teams, none of them had a wide receiver one or a Pro Bowl wide receiver for that matter.
Edelman never made a Pro Bowl?
Not his entire career.
Wow, that's... But to me, you have the quarterback. I think Brady helped with that. Mahomes helped with the Chiefs.
Yeah, because the Chiefs last year did not have a wide receiver who was a Pro Bowler.
But they did have Kelsey.
Yeah. And that's where you can go to the importance of tight ends, I think, is higher than that of a number one. I think a number one tight end is more important than a number one wide receiver. And I think you see that example with Gronk and Brady versus a number one wideout. Because a committee team approach for wide receivers has worked before. And like I said, with Brady and with Mahomes last year, but having Gronk, even though in 2016 Gronk was hurt for that playoff run, so that and they still won the Super Bowl, having that tight end one really does help.
Yeah, and I feel it's tough to get a unique tight end, but I do think it's important. And if you don't have that number, you need a number one guy you can trust. It can be a tight end. To me, those are even more difficult to hit on because you try with Kyle Pitts. That hasn't really worked with Atlanta.
Yeah, but I think it has worked. Kyle Pitts is extremely good. It's just they are playing against his strengths. They're not even throwing him the ball that much. They want him to be a pass blocker, which he is not. He's more of the Kelsey than he is the Gronk.
True, but still, he was drafted so high, and the production hasn't equaled it.
I think it has. I mean, again, if you go back to his first season, he was exceptional playing under a new system. But after a new coach was hired, he didn't play well because the system did not allow him to play well. He had over 1,000 yards in his rookie season and was a Pro Bowler. Not many tight ends get 1,000 yards in their rookie season. I bet it's less than 5 that have ever done that. Last year, Pitt struggled, but I think that's a systematic issue, QB issue, coach issue than it is a Kyle Pitts issue.
Okay, he did do well in his rookie season, but yeah, last year, 356 yards, 28 receptions.
Yeah, but that happened in 10 games, and he wasn't targeted. He was targeted almost half as less.
But still, if you're number one guy,
but you're not throwing the ball. They didn't throw the ball at all. They probably were. I mean, I'll check right now, but they were probably least in attempts for passing. They were actually second least. I bet the Bills were not the Bills. The Bears were the team that was less, but they didn't throw the ball at all. They were 31st in attempt and 31st in yards. They did not throw the ball, and because of that, it really did not allow Pitts to be a tight end of note.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. But I'm not sure if there were a lot of tight ends taken in this draft. We'll see how they pan out, but I can't think of other tight ends drafted recently that have become premier tight ends.
Yeah.
I think you can have success drafting tight ends, wide receivers out of the first round. But to me, also it takes longer than compared to a running back, where you can just have rookie standout running backs. Some wide receivers can show flashes, but I don't think they become consistent until their second year. Oh, and the big guy I forgot was A.J. Brown. That's another guy that was traded at the draft. A.J. Brown to the Titans. The Titans drafted Treylon Burks, who was injured. And they also drafted Robert Woods traded for Robert Woods, and their passing game took a step down.
I would like to mention that in Tom Brady's 7 championship seasons, only one season did he have a Pro Bowl wide receiver, and that was back in his first year as a starter where Troy Brown was a Pro Bowl wide receiver. So he did not have one Pro Bowl wide receiver his entire in any playoff season championship season except for his first one. But he always did have a very good tight end, whether it be Gronk or even Martellus Bennett whenever Gronk was out in 2016.
That's a good point. I think with truly elite quarterbacks, you don't have to worry as much with wide receivers. But once you get to the lower tier quarterbacks, they need some help by having better wide receivers.
But I'll raise you again that usually very elite teams have elite quarterbacks. Like teams that are contending for a championship usually have top 5 QBs on them.
So what were elite teams last year?
Chiefs, Eagles, Niners, Bengals. I don't want to say Bills because I will, but I'll say Bills, sure. Okay. Those are probably my 5.
Okay, then who is the elite?
The only one without an elite one is obviously the Niners, and that's because they not only have the best defense in the league, but also have the best rushing attack in the league, which is a crazy duo. And again, they don't even make the championship.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was my question. And then everyone else on that list does have top quarterbacks, but only George Kittle. That's another. All but one really. Well, no, they all had, because you have Kelsey on the Chiefs. You have the stacked wide receivers on the Bengals. You have George Kittle. You also have Debo.
And Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey.
And Brandon Ayuk, who was very good last year.
Bills, you have Stephon Diggs. And then on the Eagles, you had
Brown and Smith and Goddard.
Yeah. So you need a number one guy. It's just how do you find that guy? To me, is difficult. Because if you look at the Eagles, they drafted Devontae Smith high. They traded for Brown, and then they drafted Goddard maybe like 5 years ago.
It was probably longer than that.
It was when Jason Witten retired the first time with the Cowboys.
Oh, this year will be his 6th, so it was 5 years ago. Okay. But even Goddard only had 702 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. But he's what you would consider elite as a tight end. That's because the bar for tight ends is so low, which is why I say that about Pitts so much. Like having Goddard's never had it in a 1,000-yard season, and Pitts had that as a rookie.
He did. Goddard got injured, though, right?
He played 12 games.
Okay, he was out. Okay, I guess he was out 5 games.
But even the year before that, when he played in 15 and started 14, he only had 830. Okay. He's never been on pace for an 1,000-yard year. I'll say that.
All right. We'll have to see how Pitts does, but we're just going to have to see if that changes. If he goes back to his premier form or his rookie form, or it's a middle. Because I don't know if I'd take a tight end that high with the Falcons.
That was with a different coaching staff, but I still think he was the best player available at that time. Pitts is a very, very, very good talent. He'd be the best wide receiver on at least 5-7 teams, and that he doesn't even play wide receiver.
Well, yeah, they're kind of. I'm trying to remember what his draft was. Is that 2021? Yeah, it was 2021. Or would it be the 2020 draft?
It was the 2021 draft.
Oh, 2021 draft. Okay. Because wasn't he taken
fourth?
Okay, so you would take Kyle Pitts over Jamar Chase?
No.
Jamar Chase was 5.
Yeah, I know that, but Zach Wilson doesn't go 2 in a redraft.
That's true. But I'm saying you're at 4, and you look at...
You also have to think about the fact that they already had wide receivers. Like, Russell Gage was still playing good for them, and Calvin Ridley. They did not have a tight end. Like, none. And Kyle Pitts was supposed to be, and is, that next level tight end.
But even... I don't think I would have taken him. I would have... Because Penei Sewell was there. Okay, I remember this draft well. This is a Penei Sewell draft.
But you wouldn't have even taken Chase there because we were both higher on Sewell than we were on Chase.
I would have taken Penei Sewell, but I don't. To me, Kyle Pitts wouldn't have been high on my list or super high on my list.
Based on what he did at college, he would have been very high on mine.
He probably would have been 3. I would probably have Penei and then Chase, then Pitts.
I think a lot of hindsight being 2020 and the fact that the Falcons did not use him right last year is a big reason why we're saying that Chase would go ahead of him.
Well, if you're telling me you're taking Pitts as a wide receiver, I'd be more comfortable with it just because I believe in
Chase didn't play the year before. You remember that? In 2020, Chase didn't play.
But he was still a wide receiver. I'm not trusting Pitts. He's a unique
I don't know what you're
prospect.
not trusting.
Because I just don't feel comfortable taking a tight end that high. I feel comfortable taking a wide receiver high.
You saying looking back at Gronk's draft, you're not taking Gronk higher? He went to the 2nd round.
What would you take? Like, how high would you go?
Gronk?
Yeah.
One. I need to look at his draft, but
Well,
I would take Gronk as high as
Max,
possible.
You're talking about hindsight 2020. I'm telling you, during that draft, I don't think I would go top 10 with a tight end.
No matter what, no matter how good their college stats are,
No matter what.
we're gonna have to do a redraft eventually, the 2010 draft or something, because I don't see how Gronk is not the number one pick.
We'll have to, but we're talking about hindsight. Like that's what you're talking about with Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase.
I still think my thing about hindsight is the fact that the Falcons ruined him. Like, I think that Pitts still has the talent. If he went to the Chiefs or a great offense like Jamar Chase did, where he has a great QB, he still has 1,000 yards in his second year, and that's insane. That's top 2 level tight end play. Top 3 maybe.
I feel more comfortable taking a wide receiver because I feel a wide receiver, you need a number 1 pass catcher. And you need a dynamic wide receiver. If you want, or you have to have a dynamic quarterback. And if you can get the mix of both worlds, then that's great. Then you have what the Bengals and Chiefs have. But this could go to the argument of Pitts. It may take more than 1 year to develop a tight end or a wide receiver.
Again, 1,000 yards in his rookie year. I think it's more about QB. With both scenarios, I think it's more about QB than we think. Because QB really does affect how 99% of wide receivers and tight ends are productively. Pitts was still very good last year. He just didn't get the ball. They ran the ball so much and were so out of games that he never really got a chance. They were asking him to block, and in college he rarely did that. He's a Travis Kelce type tight end. He's not a Gronk. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a blocking tight end.
Okay. But so wide receivers to me take a little bit more time. Because even with Devontae Adams, he took a little bit of time.
That's true. Devontae's a good example of that, but a guy like Mike Evans isn't, who still in his entire career has yet to have a season below 1,000 yards. And in his rookie year, do you know his QB? Who was his QB his rookie year?
Ooh, I want to say, it was the guy. I want to go McCown, maybe.
Yes, Josh McCown. They went 2-14 with Josh McCown as the primary starter, and he had over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns.
And he was the 7th pick of the draft.
Yes, and you could argue that he should have went higher.
Well, yeah, I'm comfortable doing that with a wide receiver.
You're comfortable taking a wide receiver 1?
Not
like
1's tough, but like top 5, I'm cool with it.
This draft was insane when it comes to wide receivers.
Because I feel when you're taking a first-round wide receiver, you feel they're going to come up day 1. But once I get out of that, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for a 2nd-round pick, 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick. And then there are a few exceptions. But just compared to a running back, I feel I can have a running back taken in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, and they can produce day 1.
I'm going to do some research real quick. The problem with a wide receiver at taken low is that they usually don't play a lot. It's not because they can't play. It's because they're not played. For example, Antonio Brown, his first year wasn't played basically at all. And in his second year had over 1,000 yards. He just didn't get the ball at all. But he was a 6th-round pick, and so they didn't play him.
What about why am I forgetting his name? It's not. Oh, geez, I'm confusing him with the other wide receiver. It's Ty Higgins. He was taken in the 2nd round. What was his production like first year?
T. Higgins. His first year, he had 908 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Okay, how do you feel about that? Because he's a guy where I think he played a lot.
He did. I mean, his rookie season team was horrible, and he didn't even have really a starting QB for a third of the season. But yes, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. So I feel there's a give and take. If you have a premier quarterback and okay wide receiver, you can make them better. But also if you have a premier wide receiver and then not very good quarterback, the wide receiver can still do well, as you mentioned, as you pointed out with the Mike Evans.
Yeah. I mean, we see tight ends like Mark Andrews continues to have good seasons even when Lamar is out. Like Lamar was out last year and he still had 847 yards in 15 games with 5 touchdowns and was a Pro Bowler. The year before that, he had 1,361 yards and 9 touchdowns. And again, Lamar did not play every game.
Okay. Yeah. So back to the original question. Do you think it's easy to replace a wide receiver? A true number one wide receiver?
What's your definition of easy? I don't think it's easy, but I think it's possible. I'll say it like that.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I can just use the draft picks I got and draft another wide receiver.
I think you could. I think you could.
I think it would take some time. I don't think I can do it immediately the next year.
What pick are you trading me?
If you get a first round pick in your trade with the wide receiver.
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was taken with the 27th pick in the first round, and his first year had 802 yards and 2 touchdowns. But again, that was not a good. I mean, yeah, that was a 2-14 Houston team with Case Keenum and Matt Schaub being the starting QBs, and they as a unit had more interceptions than they threw touchdowns. So is it D-Hop who took long, or is it the fact that he had no QB at the start of his career?
I think it's a mix of both. But you're telling if you're the Cowboys and they got a better trade with the Browns and they get a first or maybe a second, are they going to immediately replace Amari Cooper's production with that pick? Or do you have to do extra stuff?
I think if you do things the right way, you can replace guys. I mean, it took over a year, but I would say that the Titans replaced A.J. Brown, at least short term.
Yeah, I think it takes over a year, which is why I would be more willing to give top wide receivers money because it's not a quick fix.
I mean, Garrett Wilson, who was taking 10th overall in the draft, had 1,100 yards last year as a rookie, with Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco and Mike White as his main guys.
Okay. But he was like 12, right?
He was 10.
He was 10? Okay.
I'm just saying that if you had got a first round pick, that's a guy who pretty quickly developed into becoming a solid wide receiver. I'd say even Christian Watson did. 611 yards and 7 touchdowns after a bad start to his season isn't bad. Now, it's not obviously Devontae Adams, but that's the best wide receiver in the league versus a rookie.
Which is kind of the thing I'm going into. Christian Watson could develop into the number one receiver, but it doesn't just happen immediately when I look at a running back.
I don't think you could replace a number one running back 1-to-1. You can't replace it 1-to-1. You can't tell me that the Panthers trade away Christian McCaffrey and are immediately going to get another Christian McCaffrey.
But they can get...
No, they can't.
They can get they can still have a good running game. Okay.
And that's my point. That's my point about the wide receiver.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know. To me, it's more difficult. I don't think with a running back, if I were to get rid of the guy, like with the Cowboys, if I get rid of Tony Pollard, I'd sign someone and I'd draft someone. and I feel that would work. But with a wide receiver,
But you have to put it on the same. Is Tony Pollard top 10?
I think he's close.
But you're saying with the Packers, I don't think it's possible to trade the best wide receiver in the league and expect to replace them with one guy. But I still think you can have the wide receivers were not the reason why the Packers didn't make the playoffs. We had bigger issues than that.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's hard to replace, again, Christian McCaffrey. If for some reason the Chargers had to trade Eckler, I don't think they're replacing him. You can bring two guys in. You're not replacing him. He's led the league in rushing plus receiving touchdowns the past 2 years and had basically 1,600 yards each season. You're not replacing that with just some signees and a draft.
Okay. Yeah. To me, it's difficult to replace one wide receiver, even with the committee. I think you just have to make sure you have the right quarterback and you also get the right guys.
Yeah, it's a tough dilemma that every team deals with differently.
Yeah, and it's a dilemma we could see happening with the Bengals. And we're seeing it with the Vikings now because they had Jefferson and they had Thielen. They got rid of Thielen, but they also drafted the USC wide receiver,
Jordan Addison.
So we'll see, can he replace Thielen?
We'll have to find out.
Yep. Let us know what you think about this, and thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.